He ran virtually unopposed for re-election. He presided over a booming post-war economy and declared the Western Hemisphere as off-limits to Europe. But beneath the surface of the era of good feelings, there were deep political divides on subjects such as slavery, expansion, and economic collapse. So, was James Monroe a steady genius, or did he just get lucky? Welcome to Presidential Paradox, and today we are talking about our 5th U.S. president. James Monroe was born in 1758 Virginia to a modest plantation family. He fought and was wounded in the Revolutionary War, crossing the Delaware with George Washington. He studied law under Thomas Jefferson, and they had a mentor-mentee relationship that lasted decades. Politically, he served as U.S. Senator, Governor of Virginia, Ambassador to France and Britain, Secretary of State, and briefly as Secretary of War. He witnessed the French Revolution firsthand while ambassador and grew skeptical of radical revolutionary ideas. He was a part of the failed negotiation of the XYZ affair and played a major role in securing the Louisiana Purchase as Jefferson's diplomat. Couple cool facts about James Monroe. He's the only president besides George Washington to run effectively unopposed. And when the British burned D.C. down, Monroe was essentially acting as both Secretary of State and Secretary of War. So what case can we make for James Monroe being one of the best U.S. presidents in history? What were some of his highlights? Well, one of them was the doctrine with his namesake, the Monroe Doctrine. This declared that the U.S. would oppose any European colonization or interference in the Americas, not just North America, but South America as well. This policy was the staple of American international diplomacy for over a century until we became a global superpower. It was largely written by John Quincy Adams, but it was delivered and backed by Monroe, giving it its namesake. He was also the president during the era of good feelings. This was a time of political unity and economic stability, where the Federalist Party was essentially dead and Democratic Republicans dominated. This helped America heal post-War of 1812. It was a good time, and that's partly why Monroe was re-elected so easily. He also had a good expansionist vision that the people at the time really liked. He oversaw the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819, acquiring Florida from Spain. He helped define America's southern and western borders and supported infrastructure improvements like roads and canals. And James Monroe, he had a lot of strong personal integrity. He avoided any big scandals. He was quiet, humble, and unifying, beloved even without dramatic speeches or showmanship. Those were some good points for James Monroe, but what case can we make against him? What were his lowlights that we can point to being one of maybe the worst presidents in U.S. history? Let's try. Well, for one, the Panic of 1819. This was the first major peacetime financial crisis in U.S. history. Banks failed, foreclosures spiked, and unemployment rose. Monroe responded with a laissez-faire approach, not intervening much as he saw it as a natural correction, but it was a little bit of an economic collapse at the time during his second term in office. Another thing, the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Monroe signed the deal that allowed Missouri in as a slave state and Maine as a free state, keeping the balance of the country momentarily. It established the 3630 line, saying there was no slavery north of it from there forward. Although this issue just kicked slavery down the road until it was one of the reasons causing the Great Civil War. He was sort of a passive leader. He didn't write the Monroe Doctrine. That was largely John Quincy Adams, and he avoided hard political fights and was more of a manager than an innovator. So he didn't have that strong leadership persona. And in regards to slavery, he was a slaveholder himself, owning dozens of slaves at his Virginia plantation, and he supported the American Colonization Society, which aimed to relocate freed black people to Liberia. He never took a moral stand against slavery personally. Alright, now a what if question for you in the comments for some discourse. What if James Monroe took more intervention, more action during the Panic of 1819? Could our economy stabilize a lot quicker? Could he have avoided the overall panic itself? Or do you agree that he kept it a laissez-faire approach? Do you think he should have intervened at all? Let me know in the comments below. Now it's time to grade James Monroe and see where he goes on the presidential tier list. How good of a president was he based on these categories? Let's do Road to the White House. Well, he was a war hero, a diplomat, and Jefferson's personal protege. He gets a solid A for Road to the White House. Pretty impressive political climb. What about his successes? Well, the Monroe Doctrine was a huge foreign policy doctrine that we used for a long time. There was peaceful expansion of our borders without much war or bloodshed, and there was a time of national unity, and for the most part during his presidency, economic sustainability. So we're going to give him A- for successes. Really solid. Now, what about his failures and controversies? Well, the Panic of 1819 was possibly mishandled. That was definitely a little bit of a lowlight. And so is the Missouri Compromise. So we're going to give him a B. He could have had much more failures and controversies compared to other presidents. So I think a B is fair. Now, what about morality and ethics? He was a slaveholder who took no moral stand on the issue, but he had integrity everywhere else. I'll give him a middle of the line C for morality. What about his long-term impact? Well, his doctrine endured for over a century, even though it's often credited to John Quincy Adams, and he is a legendary figure in presidential history. I'm going to give him a B+ for long-term impact. Not quite A tier, but upper B for sure. Now, what about his leadership and vision? He was calm, capable, but not really forceful or too innovative. So I'm going to give him a solid B, kind of upper, but not amazing, decent leader. Now, what about public sentiment, popularity? He was very, very popular in his time with a near unanimous re-election. You have to give him an A for popularity. He's still well regarded today. Now, what about constitutional respect? He was a firm believer in states' rights and limited federal reach, as we saw in the Panic of 1819. So you have to give him a really firm A for constitutional respect. So what does that land him on my tier list? I'm giving him an A-, right? So he is a very good president, the first to fall into this A tier list. So my final thoughts on James Monroe: he may not have been the most bold or courageous or powerful, heavy-handed, but he was steady. He held the country together during uncertain times. He expanded U.S. territory without war and declared America's place in the world, saying, "Europe, your hands are off limits on the Western Hemisphere." His quiet presidency might not make headlines, but his legacy endures. It was a time of overall prosperity. James Monroe is one of the better presidents in U.S. history, in my opinion. What do you think? Put it in the comments below. Hit me with the like button if you like the series and want to see more. If you want to see more of this, outdoor videos, or faith-related content, hit that subscribe button and join the Southern Woods community. And I will see y'all in the next video. But before I go, just like every president, you need your own secret society. If you want bonus exclusive content, deals down the road, exclusive merch drops, stuff like that, check out the membership program below and be part of the Southern Woods family, Kindred, or Inner Circle. Now, without further ado, I'll see y'all in the next video. Southern Woods out.